You guys have asked for it, I like making these videos, so we're back again looking at the stories behind 7 more famous guitars. No need to beat around the bush, let's dive in. The first guitar on our list comes from a time when hair was bigger, singers sang higher, and guitar solos were faster. Steve Vai's Evo Gem was a fresh and unique axe making its debut back in the 80s. By 1985, Steve Vai had become an established session musician. His resume included gigs with David Lee Roth, Alcatraz, and of course, the great Frank Zappa. As he started to pursue a career as a solo artist, he also began searching for a guitar that reflected his individuality. Armed with an idea, Steve Vai went to a guitar repair shop in Hollywood to get help bringing his vision to life. The end result crossed elements of a Strat and a Les Paul. It had 24 frets, the last 4 being scalloped. The pickups were hand-picked by Steve, and he had sorted out a floating trem. Steve Vai took this prototype to a number of different companies looking to do an endorsement deal. Ibanez took him up on the offer. The company was looking to shed their image of being imitators, perhaps making them more accepting of a project so unique. Steve requested the guitar be made in a number of bright, in-your-face colors, and of course it had to have the signature handle cutout. The reason for this? Well, in Steve's own words, I decided to do one thing that no company would copy because it would just be a blatant ripoff, so I put on the monkey grip. Steve was given 5 white gems, which he named after historical Harley-Davidson engines. The guitar that became his favorite was named after the Evolution engine, Evo. Moving on, our next guitar isn't quite as recognizable as the other ones on our list, which might account for its interesting history. John Lennon's 1962 Gibson J60E, also known as the Love Me Do guitar, is the world's second most expensive guitar, selling in 2015 for $2.4 million. John used this acoustic to record a number of the early Beatles classics, including of course Love Me Do. It's believed that the guitar was stolen in 1963 before it eventually turned up at a shop in San Diego. Having no idea the significance of the guitar, it was bought and sold a number of times for a fraction of its worth before it eventually ended up in the hands of a fellow named John McCaw. Some 50 years later, McCaw noticed that the guitar he bought for $275 bore a striking similarity to a guitar he saw in an old Beatles picture. It was authenticated and sold at auction for $2.4 million, blowing away the expected sale price. Next up on our list is Stevie Ray Vaughan's Lenny Strat. Before Stevie hit it big, he was hustling around the Texas circuit, making a name for himself playing his own brand of the blues. He came across the instrument in 1980 on sale for $350. Still years away from the big bucks, he didn't have the cash to afford it. Lucky for him, he did have a caring wife. His significant other, Lenora, or Lenny for short, rounded up all of SRV's friends and essentially crowdfunded the purchasing of the instrument. She gave it to Stevie as a birthday gift, and he proceeded to stay up all night playing it. It was during that inaugural session he came up with the instrumental song Lenny, a name he would also use for the guitar. Our next guitar is actually a bass guitar, but still a guitar nonetheless. Some might say that Jaco Pastorius is to bass what Jimi Hendrix is to guitar, and he made a name for himself playing a 1962 Fender fretless jazz bass he dubbed the Bass of Doom. Jaco acquired it in a trade with a friend back in the 70s. He then promptly ripped out the frets with a butter knife, filled in the gaps with plastic wood, and covered it in epoxy. It may not have been the first ever electric fretless bass, but Jaco was the man who brought that sound to the masses. He would use it throughout his career, beating it up, wearing it down, even smashing it once for it to be rebuilt by his tech. The story of Jaco Pastorius is a sad and troubled one. Near the end of his life, he spent an extended amount of time homeless in New York, hanging out in parks with his bass by his side. In 1986, the instrument was stolen and wouldn't resurface until years later when, with the help of Metallica bassist Robert Trujillo, it was reunited with the Pastorius family. Moving on to an instrument that has been passed down through generations of amazing players, Kirk Hammett's 1959 Les Paul. The guitar was bought by a young guitarist named Peter Green back in the 60s. He used the guitar after taking over Eric Clapton's position in the band John Mayall and the Blues Breakers, and he would continue to use it for years after forming Fleetwood Mac. It's said that this guitar has a certain magic to it. Its nasally but warm tone isn't typical of a Les Paul. The sound has since been attributed to a factory mistake putting the pickups out of phase. Before Peter Green left Fleetwood Mac, he lent the guitar to a young promising musician he'd become friends with, an Irish kid named Gary Moore. Gary would use it throughout his prolific career until money troubles in 2006 forced him to sell it. It changed hands a couple times and eventually was acquired by Metallica guitarist Kirk Hammett for a reported $2 million. Here's what he has has to say about it. I'm just blown away that I have it. It's an amazingly inspiring instrument. Next on our list is Joe Strummer's 1966 Telecaster, a guitar that goes hand in hand with the punk rock movement of the late 70s. This guitar was Joe's #1 axe throughout his career with The Clash and as a solo performer. It originally featured a sunburst finish, but in true punk rock fashion, Joe took it to an auto repair shop and had it spray painted with gray primer. He covered it in stickers and rocked the Casbah with it right up to the end of his life. Perhaps the most interesting thing about this instrument is the nature in which Joe acquired it. In 1975, at age 23, Joe married a woman from South Africa so that she could obtain British citizenship. He was given £120 to compensate him for the brief matrimony. He used that money to buy his guitar. And last on our list for today is the stuff of legend, sometimes called the Holy Grail or Bigfoot of guitars, the Gibson Moderne. In 1957, Gibson applied for 3 guitar design patents. They would become the Flying V, the Explorer, and a third guitar that never went into production was called the Moderne. Even though the Moderne wasn't destined to hit shelves, there were a handful of prototypes made. No one knows where any of them are today, but there is plenty of myth that surrounds them. A Gibson employee claims to have taken one out of the vault to be used in a stage show back in the 60s. A guitar store owner from Florida swears that one came through his shop some 60 years ago. There have been many fakes made along the way, and Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top even claims to own one, even though he refuses to let anyone see it. The legend is real, even though there's no physical or photographic evidence that any of these prototypes still exist. Gibson would go on to put the Moderne into production in 1980 as well as reissue it in 2012. It's safe to say if any of the originals do surface, they will fetch a pretty penny on the auction block. Who knows, maybe you have one of these white whales sitting in your attic. And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this installment and the stories behind famous guitar series. If you didn't see a guitar that you thought should be on this list, make sure you check out my other 2 videos on this subject. I'll put links in the description. And if it's still not there, let me know in the comments. I can always do a 4th video. Thank you all for watching, and the biggest of thank yous to everyone who supports my channel through Patreon. I'm able to put out regular content because of the people involved in that program. If you like what I do and are interested in early access to videos, getting your name in the credits, and a number of other rewards, please consider hitting that link over there. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. I've got 2 new videos every week. Make sure you stay tuned. Until next time, thank you for watching. I'm Samurai Guitarist, and I will see you again soon.